Okay, people, if we can make a start, please. So, good evening. Well, still missing a few councillors. I'm sure they're on the way with the traffic that's impeding Maidstone at the moment. I'm Councillor Wilby, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if a fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else intends to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? Thank you, sir. I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that the members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of the microphones, and to remind them to turn the microphones off when they are finished. Also, if you are here talking on behalf of an application or against the application, on the microphone at the front, you have 3 minutes for your time. Are there any apologies for absence? We've got Councillor Summergill, and we've got Councillor Greenham, or Councillor Summergill as a substitute member. Okay.
Councillor Perry and Councillor Reardon are on their way. They're just stuck in the traffic.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to item 3. Are there any visiting members?
Councillor Millam from Fanton Oakwood Ward come to speak on agenda item 16.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul Harper, agenda item 1685, Tunbridge Road, surprisingly.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Moving on to item 4, there are no items recommended for withdrawal from the agenda tonight. We'll go quickly on to item 5. The adjourned meeting will be held on the 20th of November 2025 if required. Item 6, we have quite a lengthy urgent update. I intend to give members 10 minutes after they introduce the item to actually digest those papers and take all other urgent updates, written and verbal. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? I have to disclose that I am a member of Topham Parish Council. I have taken no part in the item on the agenda tonight, and I'm also the chairman of Hell Park Nature Reserve and also taken no part in the discussions. I shall move, as always, Councillor Jeffries to the left round. So, councillors, have you got anything to disclose, Councillor Spooner? Anything to disclose? No.
Thank you, Chairman. There's an item on tonight's agenda, which is, or two actually, sorry, item 19 and 20. I attended when they were previously at Planning Committee as a visiting member and spoke against the item. So for those 2 items, I'll withdraw from the committee. With your indulgence, I'll speak as a visiting member and then I'll exit while the debate's on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, no one on the left. Left to right.
Thank you, Chair. So with regard to item 13, whilst Cabinet Member, I don't think I have any part to play in that item, and so therefore I don't see any need to withdraw from that item. Item 14, as members will be aware, I'm the Boxley Downs Ward Councillor. I have received briefings from the agent in this regard months ago before the planning application was put in, and was very clear at the time that I was simply receiving information. I am now chair of Boxley Parish Council. I took no part in the decision making of the submissions made by them, and therefore I believe that I can take part in this evening's proceedings. I have been lobbied on items 19 and 20 to save you the trouble previously, but again don't feel that I am predetermined in any way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Councillor Jeffries.
Item 13, it's in Councillor English's portfolio, but as I have all the portfolios in my leadership role, I will step out for that one.
Okay, we will then move on to disclosures of lobbying. As always, I shall start on the left. Councillor Gooch.
Yes, apologies for being late, Chairman. I do apologise. Yes, I've been lobbied on item 14 and item 16. Thank you.
Items 14 and 16.
Items 14 and 16.
Items 14 and 16.
14 and 16, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Items 14, 15 and 16.
14, 19 and 20.
14, 16, 19, 20.
Item 14.
Just stick me down for all. So, moving on to item 9, I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Thank you, councillors. Item 10, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 11, there are no petitions this evening. Item 12, deferred items, I call upon Tony Ryan to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. From the update I gave to the last meeting, I think there's been some slippage on one of the cases. Another case, as reported previously, is back to this committee. The case that was due to come back, the other case was due to come back. I think we intend to get back as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Moving on to item 14, Park Farm. I call upon Richard Timms to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So yeah, this introduction will be a little bit longer than normal, but I think it's important to go through the details. So this is an application seeking permission for a 15 megawatt solar farm for a 40-year period. So this is the location plan. You'll see it's quite a large red outline. The western part is where the solar farm itself is proposed, but the red outline extends quite a bit further northwards because there's bioverse BNG planting to the north. The red outline also covers the underground cable run, which you can see here. And then it extends up to this area here, which is quite large, but that's because there are 5 pylons there and the precise connection isn't known yet. So it's to cover the scenarios. You've got the M2 motorway along here, which is also the northern boundary of the Kent Downs National Landscape, and the site falls wholly within the National Landscape. To the south west, you've got the North Downs Special Area of Conservation, which is also triple SI, and an area of ancient woodland that runs along here. So this is the layout plan. So as you can see, the blue area is where the solar panels would be. They'd be surrounded by wire security fencing, be 40 CCTV poles, and then there's sort of ancillary buildings, containers in the corner here, and the orange area is the temporary compound for construction. The access runs along here onto Hart Farm Road. As Ordnance Survey map And that's the approximate location of the solar panels. And this is really to show where the North Downs Way National Trail is, which is the green line with the diamond shapes on it. So that runs along the west side and down here. In terms of the landscaping proposed, it's basically new native hedging around the outsides of the solar panels. And then along here, there's an area of woodland and scrub planting, which flanks the North Downs Way trail, and hedging would then extend further forward. These areas would be for the BNG, which is mainly sort of grassland. Then on the other side, again, the hedging continues around development and another area of woodland and scrub planting along the eastern edge. And then lastly, this is just an aerial image to just give you a sort of rough idea of the development in its wider context and an idea of scale. So go for a few photographs. This is taken from the North Downs Way trail, and this line here is roughly the southern edge. So the panels would be within this area here. Obviously, this is as it is now, and there would be landscaping between this view and the solar farm. This is similar position, got the North Downs Trail on the left, and the development would be in here. Again, there would be landscaping, obviously in time, that would mature. This is slightly further up, looking, the solar farm would basically be in the view here. And I think what this sort of shows is the openness of the landscape and the views that you get across the fields at the moment. Similar view, the development would be in here. And then this is up towards Bell Lane, so further north. Solar farms roughly in here. Again, there would be hedging proposed on the outside of that path. Now we're to the southeast, about 800 meters away, and the site is within this space here. So you've got the trees on the sort of eastern end, and then it runs all the way along here. And then this is to the east. Access is here, and then the site's in here. This is you've probably seen this on the lobbying materials. So this is the applicant's photo montages. So the top is from a similar position as my first photo. So this is the development on year one, how you'd see it. And then at the bottom with the landscaping, that's predicted to be year 15, that you wouldn't see it from that path. And then lastly, the images. So this was the photo I just showed you. That's my photo from a few weeks ago. And then this is the photo montage, and it shows the new hedge here that's proposed, but you can obviously see the solar farm of it. So just the key issues. First and foremost, the site falls within national landscape, which has the highest level of landscape protection under the NPPF, and where great weight must be given to conserving and enhancing the landscape and scenic beauty. Permission should also be refused for major development other than in exceptional circumstances and where it is in the public interest, and I'll come on to that. In addition, there is a legal duty on decision makers, us, to further the purpose to conserve, which means don't harm, and enhance the natural beauty of national landscapes. Local policy reiterates this, but also protects the countryside in general, requiring that significant harm should not be caused. For the reasons outlined in the report, it's considered that the development is entirely out of keeping with the rural character, which has the large open fields, offering wide views across the landscape, and there's very limited built development. The application site positively contributes to this character as it's part of these larger open fields. The development would also be highly visible from a number of public vantage points, including at close quarters from the National Trail, for a number of years before the landscaping grows. From other footpaths, the development will remain visible despite the landscaping. As such, in our view, it will cause significant landscape harm, which is contrary to local policies that protect the countryside and the national landscape, and also the NPPF. The proposals are therefore contrary to the development plan. As councillors know, decisions should be taken in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. These main considerations are the requirement to give significant weight to the benefits of renewable energy under the NPPF, the need for renewable energy to meet nationally legally binding targets to achieve net zero, where solar is a key part of the government strategy, the need for renewable energy to contribute to the government's Clean Power Action Plan, again, where solar is recognised as a key contributor. And specifically for this development, the applicant estimates it would produce enough electricity to power around 6,600 homes per year, with an annual saving of around 5,800 tonnes of CO2, which would clearly help towards meeting national targets. These do attract significant weight in favour of the development, but they are considered to be clearly outweighed by the harm to the countryside and the national landscape and the conflict with the development plan. The proposals would also fail to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the national landscape in accordance with the legal duty. Lastly, in terms of exceptional reasons, as I referred to earlier, whilst the proposals are considered to be in the public interest, the scope for developing outside the national landscape has not been demonstrated as being unfeasible in our opinion. It would have a harmful impact on the recreational enjoyment of the national trail, and significant harm would be caused, which in our view means that exceptional circumstances have not been demonstrated. So the NPPF states that development should be refused. So for the reasons set out in the report, refusal of the application is recommended. Thank you.
Okay, councillors. As I did say, we've got quite a lengthy update, so I will give councillors 5-10 minutes to actually go over it. We all good, councillors? Has everyone had a chance to read through it? Or people still reading? Dennis, do you need more time? Dennis? Yeah. Okay, we're good to start. Okay, thank you, councillors. Right, in that case, we will go to speakers, and we have Mr. Turner, an objector.
Good evening, members. This statement concerns both the substance of the Hart Farm proposal and the lawfulness of the wider planning framework that supports it. Through Freedom of Information and Environmental Information Regulation requests, we now hold official admissions from Maidstone Borough Council, reference EIR 0347, 16th of September 25, confirming that the council holds no local CO2 data underpinning its climate emergency declaration and has no statutory authority or legal mandate for that declaration. In addition, formal correspondence from the Ministry of Housing, Kent County Council and Kent District Councils confirm no data exists on 5-year residency, employment or verified local housing need. The evidence required under NPPF paragraph 60 to justify local housing targets. This means that both the climate and housing foundations of the council's planning policy are unsupported by evidence. Any claim that the proposed solar scheme or the wider housing allocations deliver a public benefit has no lawful evidential foundation in planning or environmental law. The National Policy Framework, Section 190, requires decisions to rest on objective evidence, and Environmental Act 2021, Section 19, obliges all public authorities, including planning authorities, to have due regard to the government's environmental principle policy statement. If there is no baseline data, then there can be no lawful test of environmental improvement, housing need, or public benefit. At the same time, Maidstone is progressing major developments, Heathlands, Lidsing and others, without completing the Regulation 18 consultation required under 2012 local planning regulations. That breach has already been raised formally as a Stage 1 complaint, COM 0291, now under investigation by the Council's legal services. It would therefore be premature to approve further strategic land use schemes while those procedural and evidential issues remain unsolved. A formal objection supported by documented evidence from Maidstone and Kent developments has been submitted to the House of Lords to assist the scrutiny stage of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. This material is already informing parliamentary review of how local authorities justify so-called climate-led or housing need development in the absence of lawful data. In summary, the Council's climate rationale lacks verified evidence. Can you stop clicking your pen, please? The Council housing targets lack lawful baseline data. The local plan processes remains procedurally incomplete, and the cumulative environmental harm from solar and housing projects has not been lawfully assessed under the Habitats Regulation or the Environment Act 2021. Accordingly, I urge this committee to defer or refuse the Hart Farm application until Maidstone's legal and evidential position has been independently reviewed and a transparent data-based Regulation 18 process has been completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. We now have Mr. Taylor for the applicant.
Good evening. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. British Solar Renewables are a reputable and established UK-based solar developer, which provides the full life cycle service in-house from project inception to decommissioning. The 15 megawatt solar farm is a temporary development on predominantly low-grade 3B agricultural land. It would connect to the national grid and produce enough electricity to power over 6,500 homes, which for context is the equivalent of 9% of households in Maidstone. It would provide a combined biodiversity net gain of over 130% and would reduce existing agricultural traffic along Hart Farm Road. The applicant has collaboratively engaged with consultees from an early stage, and there are no technical constraints or no technical objections to the proposed development of the site. The biggest threat to food security is crop failure due to climate change, and solar farms are helping to tackle this directly. Supported by the National Farmers Union, they also provide a valuable source of diversification income for farmers. The reduced disturbance and non-intensive nature of a solar site also allows wildlife to thrive and soil quality to improve. The site is located within the national landscape, and the applicant fully acknowledges that this is a high bar for acceptability. It is widely acknowledged in policy that we must transition to net zero, and that solar development is particularly well placed to facilitate this. Green energy is vital to securing our independent energy security. The applicant has a rare, early, committed grid connection date of 2027 to expedite these meaningful and significant benefits. A recent appeal decision for solar within the setting of the KDNL recognises their value to the local economy, amongst multiple relevant comparable considerations, and Kent Chamber of Commerce has formally responded in support of this application. The site search is predicated firstly on grid capacity, and after careful consideration was selected due to its size, proximity, availability, lack of technical constraints, and relatively contained and isolated nature. Pre-existing industrial overhead lines compromise the site's landscape quality and are acknowledged by the KDNL partnership as a detracting feature. The Council's landscape character assessment recognises the condition of the area to be poor and of moderate sensitivity. The Kent Downs AONB management plan recognises that landscape character is made up of many multifaceted qualities. Only one of these relates to visual impact, which we consider to be localised and mitigated against by screening along the footpath to retain amenity. Therefore, when considering the impact of the site upon landscape character, a fair and balanced approach must be taken. Yes, recognise the temporary adverse visual impacts, but we must also recognise the positive, permanent and exponential benefits that would be made to other facets of landscape character, such as biodiversity and additional woodland planting.
Can I
In
ask you
summary-
to, at the 3 minute time, should wrap up, please?
Yeah. In summary, the proposed development accords with relevant policies and guidance at all levels. The Kent Downs AONB Renewable Energy Position Statement specifically states that it is right for the AONB landscape to make an appropriate contribution to meet these targets. The proposed development is favourably placed to significantly contribute to climate and ecological emergencies, and we invite the committee to proactively determine applications that strongly align with this purpose.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy, really sorry, can you go sit next door while this is being decided? Yeah, could you go sit next door? Yes. Oh, thank you. Okay, so board member first, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. As ward member, I will simply make some initial remarks, if I may come back later in the conversation if it's necessary. You members will have seen the comments that I submitted in writing on the portal in regard to that officers had recommended for approval. So you've seen those points there that I made in order to transparently not be predetermined. I am satisfied that as the agent has pointed out in the speech just now and in the papers that we have, sorry, in the urgent update that we've received today, that indeed, as it is put in the comments at the end, the inspector carried out a balancing exercise on the example that is brought forward for comparison at Swale. That is what is before us this evening. We are being asked to balance between a number of competing goods. All of the things that are being brought forward this evening are goods. They are based on lawful policy. They are based on good science. They are based on responsible planning and engagement with the community. They are based on advance notice, other than the urgent update. By and large, we've been engaged in these processes. I'm satisfied that those things are the case. I'm still open-minded as to what the final decision should be at this point, but I am satisfied that we are in a good place and supported by policy, science and advice, and I look forward to comments from other members this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, it's interesting that the point that the ward councillor made about this being a balancing exercise. On the day that the Climate Action Tracker has stated that we're on track for a 2.6 degrees Celsius rise by the end of the century, which essentially means all of the currents and all of the weather patterns we currently know as normal will fail and change. I think we need to look at perspective in terms of some of the landscape impacts and so on that we're talking about here. And this is a site I probably know uniquely well from this committee, because I spend every weekend clearing fly tipping from Bell Lane and this area, because as colleagues know, I chair the management committee of the nearby Boxley Warren Local Nature Reserve, which is having a hard time in its own right because of climate change impacts and mostly because of isolation. And that's where my critical concern comes here. Some photographs were shown of the area that you see from the very beautiful North Downs Way, running along the edge of the ancient woodland and Detling to Waldham and Scartman. When you look out onto acres and acres of sterile open land, not a hedgerow in sight, nothing. And to my mind, until you reach the M2 and see the lorries going along. So you're essentially here, you're talking about the A229 comes up, the M2 bisects with it, and this is the corner. So in terms of tranquility and all of the other issues we associate with national landscapes, it is a bit of a challenging area. The other big challenge we have is the main field where the main solar array is supposed to go is known locally as Frogs Rough, and that is because it's very damp, and that makes it a very difficult area. But that dampness has its own challenges because we're sitting on top of an aquifer protection zone 1, the drinking water that comes out of the Chalk Aquifer. The problem is with having arable land with which gets wet all the time and has significant nitrogen applications and so on, it has consequences for groundwater, which is another challenge we face. So when I'm doing the balancing act, I'm looking at the problems we've got and seeing whether for a temporary, and it will be temporary, energy use on this site, where we give the groundwater a holiday, where we give the soil a holiday, and where we can deliver a very significant biodiversity net gain and prevent some of the isolation of the really important habitats along the scarp, that potentially that balancing act is coming over more to the side of permission than refusal. I think, though, if we were going to permit, regardless of the BNG calculation as it currently is, I actually think that the landscaping would need to be more significant. We know from work that RSPB and others have done that very significant benefits can accrue for biodiversity when solar farms are done right. I think just picking up the papers with the report where it talks about the terrestrial habitat for great crested newts and so on, then where are the ponds that are going to go in the landscaping? It talks about the long views and the screening. So where are the big trees? A few hedges aren't going to cut it. So my view is that we should defer this to look at a landscaping scheme which is equal to the importance of the protected landscape and that seeks to address the specific challenges we've got here. And the specific challenges is isolation of the woodlands along the M2 and Bell Lane and the Scarp woodlands. So we need to connect them again. And we can do that through this application. And it is about getting wetlands back into Frogs Rough. So you get frogs there again and grey-crested newts. So I think with that, I'd make a proposal that we defer for officers to negotiate a significantly enhanced landscaping and ecological mitigation scheme so that we're properly screening this, and particularly in long views from the National Trail, the North Downs Way, and also into the biodiversity mitigation. We're building in the wetlands and the land cover we need to reconnect the Scarp with the Bell Lane ancient woodlands. And I'll move that if anyone will second it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just bring Councillor Jeffries in first.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that. I know the North Downs way quite well. I'm up there. Keep running into Tony up there, strangely enough. It's one of my favourite walks, and you can get to a point near, as shown on the map, where the pylon and overhead wires have cut away the ancient woodlands, and you get a lovely view over the Weald. But you turn round and there is, I'm surprised you didn't use the word dystopian hellscape. You turn around, there's a dystopian hellscape of it just disappears into the distance. The not that well used arable land. I must say, I'm often up there, and it's not often, not many years I've seen it actually planted up, but that might just be my recollection. I think, as Councillor Thompson said, yes, it's a balancing act. It's 9% of our electricity. It's 6,500 homes. It's significant. So if we can ask officers to do that negotiation during a deferment, I think that would potentially give us a much better balance in terms of a decision, and one that we could accept more readily.
Thank you, Jeffries. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really confused. I don't think we should defer it. I think we've got plenty of information. I think we should vote on it, yes or no, but I think we should do it tonight. Don't see what a deferment will get us. Also, because as I understand it, we're not in the setting, we're in the landscape of National Valley, LNR, whatever it's called now. So that is what it is. You either are or you aren't. So on that basis, you make your decision. I think the officer's recommendations are clear. We've had the further briefing note. I'm not sure what there would be to be gained for deferring. So I'm also not sure why on some people say that you're either in it and that means you can't do all of these things. But tonight it seems we're in it, or we can have a balancing act. I am actually a bit confused by that. Because I do think that has repercussions for lots of other things and other, decisions when you are talking about the areas that have been given the highest level of protection in the country. That is what we're talking about. And we're not talking about the setting of it, we're talking about the actual thing. So I think we've got plenty of enough information tonight, and I think we should just determine it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, in fact, traversed this area quite recently, or quite often, frequently over the years. Those that know the area will know that Hart Farm Road is a popular rat run between the Medway towns and Maidstone. I use it frequently. And this is what I would call typical chalk downland. It is lovely, open, expansive land. We saw that on the photographs. I would be strongly opposed to a solar farm going in here. I support the principle of solar farms in the right locations. And as we drive around the country, we do see quite a lot of them. but they are not in national landscapes. They're not in national parks, and they tend to be very, very well screened. And you don't actually see them. You can just actually might just get a glimpse, but you do not have a massive visual impact. This will create a massive visual impact, and I would be very unhappy to see it permitted, even if we were surrounded by an equatorial rainforest of landscaping and tree planting. It's it's still going to be there, and it's going to spoil this area of typical Kent of chalk downland. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Councillor Spinner, just so I can clear this up, Councillor Russell, are you proposing we go as per papers? And vote? Do you have a seconder? Okay, thank you, Councillor Spinner.
I think we've already had a motion
Yes,
that we
you
had
have.
to vote on
We
first
have the
before that.
amendment, yeah, but we have an amendment.
Is that amendment, or I thought I heard them say they're proposing per the papers.
Yeah, per the papers.
That's not an amendment.
If you can move that, Councillor Jeffries, I've just checked with legal, so that is the process. Okay, and we will vote on that first. Okay, yours was Tony's proposal was first. This is the amendment. However, I will bring Mr. Timms in to actually clarify some points.
Thanks, Chair. It wasn't, yeah, it was just in reference to the deferral. And yeah, all I'm saying is I think to alter the landscaping, as has been suggested, definitely requires deferral. Obviously, it's materially different and it affects the BNG, so that whether it's trees, grasslands can affect the BNG, so it definitely would require a deferral. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Mr. Timms. Okay, so we're going to move with the amendment. Okay, so you propose, Councillor Harwood proposed first of all his vote. You seconded it. However, in the debate, Councillor Russell has proposed that we approve it as per the paper. We refuse as per the paper, sorry. Okay, so we're going to take that vote first. Okay, and then we're going to, if that fails, we will come to your vote. Which is deferral. Okay. Okay. Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Jeffries. I've just checked. That is correct. Okay. I'm not arguing about it anymore. Okay. Councillors. Okay. We go as per the amendment first of all. All in favour of refusal? As per the papers. Okay, that's 5. Okay. Those against? Or those abstaining? Abstain. Okay, that passes. Then that becomes a substantial motion. Okay, and we will have to vote again. Okay, so again, so those are all in favour of refusal as per the papers? Those against? I said 5-5. Okay. Okay. So we have an issue here. Okay. So I have to use my casting vote. Okay. I'm going to stick with the way that I voted. And vote against it. So I now will have to go to legal to see what we go back to now. That's failed. So we now go to the amendment. No. Councillors, so just because we're in a bit of a situation, I think it'd help Councillor Thompson if you voted slightly differently the first time. But we're going to go, we just look at some legal stuff just to make sure that we make the correct decision. So we're going to just adjourn for 5 minutes while we check that. Okay. Okay, councillors, we think we've figured out where we should be. So After consultation, we're going to move straight for the vote for deferral. Okay, as per Tony's motion and yourself, Stuart, because the central motion failed. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just want clarification what the deferral is. So Mr. Timmins is going to read out what that is.
So I think what I've noted is a deferral for an amended landscaping scheme, looking at bringing trees into it to provide connections between the existing woodlands and wetlands and ponds as well, and to better screen the development.
Okay, so we're going to be moving. All in favour of deferral? Those against? Okay, and I shall use my casting vote for deferral. Okay, thank you, councillors. Thank you for holding with us there. No, it's okay, it's okay. So, okay. Do other councillors wish to take their seats? Yeah. Okay, thank you, councillors. So those who have joined us, Councillor Reardon, Councillor Perry and Councillor Nagy, can I take any disclosures of lobbying?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for my late attendance. We were hopelessly held up in traffic. I've been lobbied on items 14, 16 and 18. Thank you.
Apologies as well. We were literally stuck in traffic. I've been lobbied on 14 and 16.
Councillor Nagy.
Apologies as well. It's taken me a couple of hours to get down from London. I've been lobbied on 14, 16, 18, 19 and 20.
Mr. Chairman, I apologise. I have been lobbied on item 16. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, and does anybody have any interest in the item on the agenda? Councillor Reardon? Do you have any interest in any items on the agenda?
No declarations of interest, thank you.
Councillor Perry?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
No declarations on my part either.
Sorry, Councillor Perry, Councillor Reardon and Councillor Perry, just making sure, so because obviously there is one in Staples, so you haven't been to any parish meetings.
Apologies, I'm a member of Staples Parish Council, but I'm not on the planning committee, so I intend to speak and vote on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm a member of Staplehurst Parish Council, but I don't sit on the planning committee. I completely ignore it. So thank you. Thank you. Apologies, members.
Councillor Nagy.
I do have a TPO in Vintners Park coming up, but there's no interest, no declaration of interest on anything.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on then. We will move on to item 15. And at Postley Road, I call upon Richard Timms to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application seeking permission for 36 dwellings and demolition of an existing dwelling. So this is the location plan. Access is proposed off Postley Road. The lodge, curtilage listed building to be demolished is here. Obviously housing to the north, east and south, and that Hale Park Nature Reserve is off here to northwest, and Hale Place Grade 2 listed building is here. This plan is just showing is the site, and it's showing the edge of the conservation area in brown, which runs along the edge of the site, comes in very slightly, and that's the listed building there. So this is the layout plan, which is in your papers. As I say, access into the site from the north. There's a 2.5-storey apartment block on the north side as you come in, and then a tree-lined street through the centre with housing obviously either side. At the south end, there's an existing oak tree that would be retained with a play area next door, and then a path linking to the south. And landscape buffers would be provided on the west, on the south and on the east sides. This is just a couple of the street scenes. So traditional designs with a few ragstone faced buildings near the front, but they're mainly brickwork and dark weatherboarding. This is an image provided by the applicant. Obviously, it's not a view that any of us would see, but I think it is useful to give an idea of the massing in the context of the surrounding development. And then just a few photos. So this is the access at the moment. We're standing on Postley Road, but that would be widened with a pavement provided on the right-hand side. Now we're into the site. These are the listed walls and piers to the former Hale Place entrance. The one on the right would be retained, and the one on the left sort of cut back, as it were, to allow the access in. This is the lodge building, which is curtilage listed because it was there when Hale Place was listed. And this is the track to the nature reserve along the northern edge. Now looking at the site itself, so the yellow line's roughly the site boundaries. So we're at the northern end looking southwards. And this is from the public footpath on the east side. So we're looking into the site. That's the oak tree at the south end to be retained. Yeah, so the key issues for this one, so the site's allocated in the local plan for approximately 62 dwellings, but the proposals are for 36. So it's not in accordance with the housing yield and is therefore contrary to the development plan. However, the site is a pretty sensitive location adjacent to the conservation area within the setting of the Grade 2 listed building and within the Lewes Valley landscape of local value. The development has therefore responded to this context with the landscape buffers to screen and soften the development, particularly on the western edge, in addition to a lower density of development. And it also allows the scheme to provide in excess of 20% BNG on site. So in our view, the sensitive context has rightly led the development rather than the number of houses in the allocation, which is usually the case. And we think this is a sufficient material consideration to allow housing numbers below the allocation. There would still be some harm to the setting of the conservation area, the loss of the lodge and part of the listed wall, but we feel this has been suitably justified and the harm minimised where possible. The public benefits of providing the housing, including affordable housing, are considered to outweigh this harm, and for those reasons and the report permission is recommended. And there's an urgent update, which was from Tuesday. And lastly, we did seek a slight amendment to the red outline because there was a drafting error around Postley Road, but it was just an error, so it's just to make sure all the plans correspond. Thank you.
Mr. Timms. Okay, can I have Councillor Paul Thomas, Double Parish Council?
Thank you, Chair, members. Topple Parish Council Planning Committee has agreed the following comments for this application in regard to the following items. The 19th century lodge, the Parish Council wishes to make no comment regarding the proposed demolition of the lodge itself, as this action was anticipated and clearly outlined in the original planning documentation. With regard to affordable housing, the Parish Council wishes to object to the proposed inclusion of discount market scheme properties in place of the affordable housing provision that originally applied for. The Council strongly supports the delivery of affordable housing as outlined in the original documentation, which better meets the needs of local residents and aligns with the objectives of inclusive and sustainable community development. We therefore request that the original affordable housing provision be reinstated in full, ensuring that the development contributes meaningfully to addressing local housing needs. With regard to education provision, on behalf of the Parish Council, we respectfully request that the contribution for education provision continues to be applied in relation to this development. The Council strongly believes that the impact of new housing on local education infrastructure remains significant and that developer contributions are essential to ensure adequate capacity and quality of educational services for current and future residents. We urge the Planning Department to maintain this requirement in line with established planning policies and community needs. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hawkins for the applicant, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is an application site that many of you will know very well. It's got an interesting planning history, and there's obviously been a lot of public interest in the previous proposals. I think you've got the previous consent shown in your papers, and I think we're all fairly grateful that wasn't built out. Because of the planning history, etc., we gave the client that's taken on the site a very strong advice to seek pre-application advice with both officers and members on this site. And they have done that. They've worked proactively with the local community members and officers to bring forward a proposal that hopefully addresses the majority of the concerns that were previously raised. This is a full planning application. It is for a significantly reduced number of houses from that shown in the local plan, but as Mr. Timms has set out, we believe there to be good reason for that, both in terms of landscaping, design quality, and for the requirements of BNG being able to be provided on site. In terms of the access into the site, which I know has historically been a problem, there's been significant dialogue with Kent County Council, and we believe a solution has been found that enables both pedestrian and vehicular access into and out of the site without any safety concerns, and that can all be provided within land that the applicant has control of. The proposal would allow for a continuous footpath to be provided from the south of the site to the north, and as you will see, a significant tree buffer will be retained and supplemented along the western boundary. The proposal would show properties that give sufficient space for these trees to grow and also remove any sort of future pressure to remove them. Internally, the proposal would provide a variety of house types, including a policy compliant level of affordable housing. And following Councillor Thomas's comments, I can confirm that quite recently the applicant has now been able to secure an affordable housing provider to take the site on. And that's going through the legals at the moment. So it's very unlikely that the council suggested cascade mechanism would come into play. In terms of the loss of the Curtis listed building, if any of you have been to the site, I think you'll struggle to find any sort of historical interest in the building itself, albeit we acknowledge the context of its positioning. But as has been set out in previous applications, its loss isn't considered to be to the detriment of the setting of the listed building. So in summary, we believe this to be a policy compliance scheme delivered by a local SME builder that will bring about much needed housing in a timely fashion. We consider this to be a high quality scheme that responds positively to the character of the area, and we are grateful for both officer and member input into the proposal at both pre-application and through the application itself. And we hope you're able to support your officer recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Technically, I am the ward councillor this area. First thing I was just going to highlight is obviously with the social housing now been in there is a condition there about the cascade housing. I'd like to have that taken out and actually just say that the social housing being provided. Okay, I'll now, Councillor Clear, you indicated first.
And it's just a quick question on something that Lewes Parish Council raised, because obviously we've had comments from Southern Water, but as you live close by, they've made some comments about the water supply, and I just wondered whether South East Water had been approached for any comments, or whether they're too busy digging up roads causing mayhem at the moment.
Yeah, so South East Water, they're not a statutory consultee, so we don't consult them, and I think it's probably advised on another application recently that is dealt with under separate legislation, so it's not for us to get into.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think almost all of us were present at the pre-application discussions where a lot of the concerns that were there were aired, and many of those issues have been assimilated into the plans before us. I'm very happy to move as per the papers, and I note your point around the cascade already coming into play before we've even determined it, but I think it still stands. There's just a couple of issues. One, I understand that the suds in the corner by the entrance road is going to be wet to some extent. There's going to be a wet component in that. So I think we need potentially another informative that where we've got gully pots, where we have gully pots, we'll need recessed curbstones next to them because of the wildlife issues. And then the other issue, and this is where I do need advice from officers as to whether this is an informative or whether we build it into a condition. I'm aware that that Lewes Parish Council have raised the issue of the public right of way KB 33A, which runs along the edge of the site, and the report and the papers talk about its very uneven nature. I think there is a suggestion that part of that will be resurfaced, but it seems to make eminent sense that the whole of that 50-metre section is resurfaced. But I don't know whether that can be part of a condition or whether it has to be an informative. But anyway, for want of kind of better wording, can we give officers delegated powers to meet with representatives of Lewes Parish Council on site to negotiate the resurfacing of the full length of that public right of way, and we build that in? I presume because it's outside the red line, it will need to be an informative, but I will defer to the officers. But I think it's referred to at paragraph 6.16 in the report that footpath, which is going to be a key element of sustainable access and egress to the site.
The officer just needs you to clarify exactly what footpath is, because it's about the one that runs down Richmond Way. Yeah, if you could. I believe that is the one you're on about, T-Truth, and councillor. I can see in there, you probably know better than me, T-Truth.
Yeah, I mean it's the the path that runs along the southeast of the site.
So it's on the screen, councillor Harwood. Is this the yellow path that runs alongside the east edge, or the green path going to the south? When it loads.
It's the one that runs to the southeast.
Okay. So
it was discussed a lot at the pre-app meeting. You'll recall.
yeah, so it's the path that runs off the south edge of the site to Cripple Street. Okay, yes. So at the moment, because I walked that, our view is that it's in a generally good condition, apart from a section near to the site which is uneven, and that's what's in the report. If councillors want the whole length to be looked at, that would be via a condition. So we do have a condition, but I think delegate to sort of investigate rather than the condition saying resurface the whole 50 metres. I think delegate to look at where it's appropriate to do it.
I think you're right. I think that the path that's immediately next to the site, there is already a proposal to do some resurfacing and patching there, and that is okay. I think it's about the 50 metres at the end going down towards Cripple Street where it is really in a bad condition, and that undermines its use. Thank you.
Tanagi?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to highlight the issue that's raised on page 70 under section 6.7 and 6.71. It's the first time I've seen this in the time that I've been on planning, but my concern is regarding the fact that there is an affordable housing section assigned to this site, and we've only just found out today that the applicant has managed to secure that housing through the 15 plus landlords that was applied for. I'm just curious whether there is a set percentage in the terms of numbers of houses that are on a site that would make it more likely for these landlords to pick this up. I appreciate that the original housing size on this site was 88 and that we have dropped this down to accommodate for the fact that it is right on the back of a nature reserve, but to then have that be detrimental to the fact that this nearly didn't get picked up by the social housing landlords seems to put in this balance of that doesn't seem to be fair on the tenants if they're accommodating for this housing statistic but don't have the landlord support. Then it opens up the door for these cascade scales.
Councillor Nagy, can we just clarify that? I see where you're going.
Yeah.
But there's a quick answer to it.
Yeah. No, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So the agent said tonight that they do have an offer. So therefore, what Councillor Wilby has suggested is that there is no cascade. So the heads of terms will just say to require 40% affordable housing, 40% affordable housing, 72% affordable rent, 28% ownership, full stop. That's what will be secured.
No, I totally understand that. It's just my concerns are for future smaller sites. If it has proved this difficult for a site of this scale to obtain that support from the landlords, I'm just wondering if there's any possibility that we could look into determining what the minimum number of houses on a site would be for the landlords to then pick that up. Otherwise, we run the risk of having those cascades come back. And like I said, unfortunately, this is the first time I've seen that cascade side of things. So I'm just wondering if we could avoid that in the future going forward by determining the number of houses that would be more appeasing to the landlords.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nagy. I think talking about us introducing a piece of policy, I think that's something that we'll have to talk outside this meeting about, to tell you the truth, not for this application itself to be decided on, and obviously something to be discussed with Councillor Harwood next year and myself. I'm sure we can find something to fit that maybe. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. And I've been listening to everybody's points that they've raised so far. I think this does look like a better development than what we had previously. But it was 62 dwellings, not 88. Not sure where that came from. So 62 down to 36. That's 42% lower. So let's just be cognizant of what we're doing. That's 26 houses that have got to be found somewhere else in the borough. So on a greenfield site, on somewhere else, you know, that's what we're doing when we have sites that are allocated in the local plan for a number, and then we work that number down. I know we all know that, but I just really wanted to underline that point. But I do think that this layout looks better. Having said that, the previous layout was 35 dwellings per hectare, which is, you know, perfectly fine for at this type of area as well. So just really wanted to underline that point, but I'm happy to go with what everybody else thinks. Thank you.
Councillor Russell. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry to be a bit of a party pooper on this one, but I'm afraid when I read this, I thought the layout was fine and all of that. But the question I ask is, the local plan review, which is approved by an inspector, has 62 houses in it. Now it's been reduced by 42%. And the only reason I could see was it is in a sensitive area. Well, lots of our borough are in sensitive areas. Is this going to be applied to every sensitive area? Because we got a tilted balance, I thought. I thought every house was important. It doesn't seem to be because it is in a sensitive area. What on earth do we mean by that? Because there are lots of other areas in our borough, particularly in the south and the east, that are equally sensitive, I would suggest. And I just feel that we're losing sight of this just a little bit. We have a tilted balance. We're giving away, as Councillor Russell has just said, we're losing a number of houses that are going to have to be found elsewhere. So I don't think this is a straightforward decision at all. And I'd like to know the real reason why this has been, for a local plan review that was fully approved, is now down to a much lower figure. Thank you.
Yeah, so first going backwards, this site was under the last local plan, so it's been saved within the local plan review, but obviously it was looked at first time round. The policy, which I'm looking at here, yeah, it says 62 dwellings, but it then says in terms of design and layout, the western boundary of the site will be landscaped in order to screen development views from the west, protect the setting of a listed building and a conservation area. So that's the sensitive specifics to this site. The western section will be built at a lower density to reflect the open character of the countryside. And there's a few other things. Well, I think, or we think, that the development is doing that, and the previous scheme, you know, officers did approve that, you know, so I'm not going to argue that, but I would say the previous scheme doesn't do that. And there are specifics, and biodiversity net gain was not in existence when this site was in the previous local plan. So yeah, we're obviously saying it is contrary to the plan, but there are specific reasons here why we consider it is more appropriate to respond to that context than just go with the numbers that says approximately 62.
Okay. Councillor Perry.
Well, without stating the obvious, we don't have a 5-year housing supply, do we? So are you saying that these all nice things you're saying outweigh that and the tilted balance? I'm afraid I can't see that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Best, thank you for that view. Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The officers have given some good reasons as to why the numbers on this site have been reduced, but I'm noticing a trend here, and there have been several local plan allocations within the urban area where we have granted permission for numbers much less than what was identified in the local plan. Now, that was a local plan that was examined by a government planning inspector for 2 years. He considered it sound. And what concerns me is if we are going to look at these sites in the urban area and continually reduce the numbers on them, then, you know, there's the GPO sorting office site, there's Springfield, reducing the numbers all the time. I think as a planning committee and as a local planning authority, we need to recognise that, you know, that ain't doing a lot of good for our 5-year housing land supply. And secondly, it's bringing forward much more need to identify more land for housing development in greenfield sites in the countryside to fulfil the government requirements. We haven't been told yet, so far as I'm aware, of what our housing requirement will be for the post-2038 period. But it's not going to be reduced at all. Medway have got to produce, it's a slightly bigger area, but, you know, 16,000 houses at 1,600 a year. We don't know what we're going to have to produce. So, you know, we need to be maximising the most use we can make of our urban sites, because otherwise we'll be looking for more and more sites for housing on greenfield areas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spinner. We'll classify this isn't an actually urban site. This is on the edge of the urban boundary. Okay, to go with it. And I do remember sitting on this same planning committee when Mr. Mumford was on there, where we actually took 200 homes out of an application and bought them on Chelsea, and no one seemed to have a problem with that. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? So I heard a proposer. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cleaver. Sorry.
Yeah, it was just on one of the was to do with the suds being wet all year round. That isn't actually proposed, but I have spoken to the applicant and that is possible. So we'll secure that in a condition, not an informative. So it'd be a condition to have wet suds, recessed curbstones, and then delegated powers to look at the 50-metre section by Cripple Street, which would go into a condition. And lastly, the change to the heads of terms to take out the cascade.
So all in favour as per the papers? Eight, 4. Those against? Four against. Those abstaining? Nothing. Okay, that is approved. Thank you, councillors. Okay, I'll just let Mr. Timms recover his laptop. Right, councillors, if we can continue, please. So we'll move on to item 16, Tunbridge Road, Maidstone. I call upon Tony Ryan to introduce the item.
Thank you. This application relates to a semi-detached house in Maidstone urban area. It's on the south side of Tunbridge Road and to the west of Bower Lane. Page 86 of the papers refers to an application requesting confirmation that the building can be used as a 7-bedroom HMO without planning permission. Contrary to the report, that application has been refused and the applicant has appealed. So we await the outcome of that appeal. This is the front elevation. The application property is on the left-hand side. The property benefits from the external access. Lawful development certificates for extensions to the building, and this is prior to those extensions being built. This is in Tunbridge Road, looking left east from the application site. So just to show the general character of the area. These application shows the side access from Tunbridge Road with the bin storage and the cycle storage to the rear of the building. The cycle storage is for 8 cycles, and the bin storage is considered suitable for a HMO of the proposed size. In terms of the ground floor on the right-hand side, there were 3 rooms towards the front of the property and a shared kitchen diner at the back. On the upper floors, there were 3 further HMO rooms at first floor, and a second floor, the last 2 rooms. All of the rooms are provided with ensuite toilet and shower. The table on page 90 of the papers compares the accommodation to the minimum standards in the SPD and finds that these standards are met. The assessment of the application against the SPD is set out in paragraphs 5.8 to 5.28 of the papers, and the application is found to be in compliance. The officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Harper, the visit member.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first test of the Council's HMO SPD to control the spread of HMOs in inappropriate locations. To correct a couple of inaccuracies, in paragraph 5.01, there are no pubs or cafes in the immediate area. There haven't been since COVID. The 2 nearest railway stations are both on the Medway Valley Railway. Maidstone East Station is over a mile from the site. This is a classic unsustainable overdevelopment. You will have received from me a map of all the HMOs on the covering plan which they've used, which shows 25 HMOs in the immediate vicinity of 85 Tunbridge Road. And the leader pointed out there's 2 additional ones I didn't actually show on that. Turning to our SPD, there's 4 reasons for rejection. So concentration, in a 100-metre radius, it says there's 149 properties and 3 HMOs. Well, despite my calling request listing most of the HMOs in the area, the report has completely ignored that. The reality is there are 26 HMOs, which is 17% of the properties, well above our 10% limit in terms of preventing harmful concentration. That is a ground for refusal. Sandwiching, on the short stretch of Tunbridge Road between Bower Lane and St George's Square, there are 22 houses plus 9 HMOs, 29% of those properties. Currently, the adjacent property to this site at number 83 is not an HMO, but number 81 on the other side is an HMO. So that house is sandwiched between HMOs, and that applies to all the remaining residential properties in that short stretch. So sandwiching is a ground for refusal. Car parking. Well, the SPD states 1 parking space per bedroom. That's 8 spaces. There are none. It even fails the minimum Kent County Council parking requirements. Including the houses on both sides of the road, between St George's Square and Bower Lane, there are 22 houses plus the 9 HMOs, but as you saw in your picture with double yellow lines and incredibly restricted on-street parking. Tunbridge Road residents will tell you they park in neighbouring streets frequently over 1 kilometre away from where they live, as there is nowhere else to park.
There are no off-street parking proposals for this proposition. Tunbridge Road is one of the most dangerous congested roads into town. Don't make it worse. Another ground for refusal. Bin storage.
Sorry, councillor Harper.
Yep, sorry.
Let-
Bin
no, no,
storage.
that is
There is
true.
no
Councillor
space
Harper.
to actually get your bins out from where they're staying.
Councillor
Look
Harper.
down there, nobody has their bins
Councillor Harper.
except at the front.
That is
Another
true.
ground for refusal. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. Good evening, officers and fellow councillors. First of all, I would like to raise that this applicant was denied a 7-bedroom HMO at this property just 2 months ago on the 8th of September. The grounds for refusal were the proposed change from a 6-bed to a 7-bedroom HMO represents a material intensification of residential use that would have a detrimental impact on local character, amenity and infrastructure, which contradicts section 5.05 of tonight's report, which in itself opens the door for all properties in Maidstone to increase by 2 rooms and it be deemed to have no impact. So please be aware of the precedent you could be setting tonight. In section 5.23, the HMO SPD sets out that HMO bedrooms require 1 space per flat in all allocations. Then in 5.26, it states that the parking permit quota is 2 residence permits and 1 visitor. Where are the rest of the parking spaces? 8 residents that could have 8 visitors. Earlier this week, I was told how a regular problem with parking permits for HMOs is residents struggle to fairly allocate them between each other. This will leave our officers' time being wasted trying to keep on top of 8 residents arguing over 2 or 3 permits. It is also stated the future occupants of the accommodation would not be reliant on private vehicles for daily needs and could reasonably access services by foot, bicycle or public transport. This is just an opinion and not based in any evidence or fact. The fact is, the evidence shows that residents in HMOs in Fountain Oakwood do still rely on private vehicles. People still need a car to go to work, visit friends and family and do the food shop. Our roads are unsafe because junctions and pavements are blocked by unsafe parking. The pavements may be well lit, but we can't walk on them because cars are parked on them. A direct consequence of this increase in unsafe parking is the only Fant-centric bus service was reduced to just 1 bus into town at 10 AM and 1 bus back at 1 PM, which is useless for most of the users and has had a huge impact on the community. The other buses that all use Tunbridge Road are unreliable, often late, or don't turn up at all, which leaves many residents to turn to car usage. I live in Fant, and when coming or going from meetings here, I can sometimes wait for over 30 minutes before a bus shows up. Most pubs and cafes in the area have shut and either lie empty or have been turned into more corner shops or takeaways with HMOs in the rooms above them. There is almost no communal community spaces for people to meet and socialise in Fountain Oakwood. In fact, we have had a planning application come through recently to change a cafe into yet another fast food outlet. Residents are sick of this chasing of profit by developers instead of nurturing our neighbourhood. The fact is, with the increase of HMOs comes an increase in unsafe parking due to overcrowding and antisocial behaviour due to lack of community. Approve this and residents will inevitably lose even more trust that their council is looking out for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, have the applicant, Mr. Mehmet.
Chair, members of the committee, good evening. My name's Omer Mehmet. I'm the applicant and owner of 85 Tunbridge Road. At the outset, I would like to draw the members' attention to the officer's report, which confirms that the tilted balance on the paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework applies in this case. As members will know, this means that planning permission should be granted unless an adverse impact would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the NPPF. The officer concludes, rightly in my view, that no such harms arise and the proposal accords with both local and national planning policy. The site already benefits from a lawful certificate for a 6-bed HMO under reference 25500497. Therefore, the principle of a HMO use at this property has already been accepted. This is a non-Article 4 area. This application seeks only a modest intensification to 8 bedrooms. Within the existing envelope of the building, there are no internal or external alterations being proposed. Each proposed room exceeds the minimum internal space standard set out in the HMO SPD and provides an ensuite bathroom. Communal facilities are large, kitchen dining room, approximately 20 square meters, plus a large base room area for a utility room. The accommodation exceeds the requirement of HMO standards. I appreciate that the parking has been raised as a concern. However, as recognised in the officer report in Kent County Council's parking standards, acknowledge that HMOs in sustainable areas may provide no off-street parking, particularly when within easy reach of public transport. The site is less than 10 minutes walk from Maidstone West train station and served by local bus routes and shops at Tunbridge Road. Cycle stores will be provided in line with policy, and it will promote sustainable travel. In summary, Chair and members, the proposal accords the policies DM1, DM9, DM23 and the HMO SPD. It delivers high quality accommodation and sustainable location. No material harm arises in respect of amenity, parking or character. I am a HMO licence holder in boroughs of Bexley and Dartford. I self-manage my properties. My father is a builder for the last 35 years and deals with our maintenance. My mother is the cleaner who cleans our HMO rooms weekly, and we provide an excellent standard of accommodation and rooms for local doctors, nurses from Maidstone and Kim's Hospital. The quality of the accommodation far exceeds many other HMO properties. As the owner of the property, I want to assure members that I like to take pride in providing tenants with great homes to live in. I ensure any maintenance problems are dealt with quickly. I vet my tenants thoroughly.
Can I ask you to
finish? Sure. Sorry. I provide work with the local area. Therefore, I would like the respectfully ask members to support the application for recommending for approval. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, I think I've got Councillor Jeffries first.
If I may, can I ask a couple of quick questions and then talk first after that? Firstly, Councillor Millen pointed out that the 7-bed one had been passed. The papers say pending consideration. It'd be useful to have clarity as to whether that 7-bed is still pending or whether it was actually passed. My second quick question is on Mr. Mehmet's and comments about tilted balance. My understanding is that this HMO wouldn't contribute to either 5-year land supply or post-delivery, the delivery side either, because it's still a single cost as a single dwelling, despite being HMO. So it'd be useful to have some clarity about why that comment is there and how it's relevant to the application.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. I was also going to ask about the density issue that Councillor Hart raised. See from that kind of.
Yeah, in terms of the concentration point first, members' attention is drawn to 510 of the papers on page 89, which sets out what, in terms of the calculation of concentration, what is actually calculated. I've got an extract from the SPD on the screen as well, which goes through sort of 3 steps in terms of how you calculate concentration. And the text in the green box restricts the HMOs. Restricts the HMOs.
Thanks, just 2 seconds. So,
if we're expected to read that, can we please be made bigger?
Oh, yeah. Can you enlarge it so we can read it, if possible?
it restricts the types of HMOs that are actually included in that calculation, i.e. The only ones that are included are the ones that the council have a record of, i.e. that require either a licence or planning consent. HMOs of between 1 and 4 bedrooms don't require any permission from the council, so they're not in the council's records and they're not part of this assessment. So that is in terms of the figures that are in the office report. That is why there's a big difference, I believe, between those figures and the figures provided by Councillor Harper. Also, I think yes, some of the I calculated like 14 of the ones on the Ordnance Survey extract are also outside the 100-metre radius of the application property. There were also comments made about sandwiching. The report goes through the main points in the SPD in some detail, and in terms of the HMOs that are assessed, there's no sandwiching issue. It goes through the size standards in the SPD as well. It meets those standards. The outdoor amenity space is met. It also talks about sort of parking. The method that the SPD uses to calculate parking is through a parking stress survey, which is asked for at validation stage. To allow the council to ask for that stress survey, it needs to go through a formal consultation process. That consultation process has only just finished, so we didn't have the means to ask for that survey when this application came in. So on that basis, it was not considered appropriate to refuse this application on the grounds of loss of parking, because we didn't have the information to assess that parking stress. The other point, I think, was in terms of the entry in the report in terms of the 7-bed HMO. That was not an application for planning permission. That's on page 86 of the papers. It wasn't an application for planning permission. It was an application for a lawful development certificate. So it was asking officers to confirm whether a 7-bedroom HMO required planning permission. That application, that lawful development certificate has been refused, and that application is currently at appeal. So that's with PINS at the moment. Yes, I think there has been case law which says that it is a possibility that 7-bedroom HMO don't require planning permission. But yeah, we assessed it in this case and determined that we had grounds to refuse this application. Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
there's one more question that wasn't answered around the tilted balance and why that's relevant in this case.
I think we took a view from the policy team, and they considered that HMOs provide accommodation, so it is included within the tilted balance is relevant in this case.
That's maybe a question for officers outside of this truth about the tilted, how that actually really works out. I've been Councillor Harwood in because I think he's got something that he wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, as colleagues are aware, I spent far too much time reading our supplementary planning document and rereading it. And we need to be really careful that we don't reach for it when it's not actually giving us any utility. And I think all of the points that were raised by officers need to be taken into account. We cannot create our own calculations. Policy is policy, and the policy has been followed and set out in real detail. And I've discussed this with officers. Yeah, I think the challenge here is public perception in some ways, in that it's a little bit like a kind of catch-22, and the first 5 don't count kind of thing. But I think in relation to this specific site, where we have to take every application on its merits and we have to look at harm, we're talking about an increase from a well-run HMO from 6 bedrooms to 8. And that is the very small change that we're looking at. We're not talking about a brand new conversion. And looking at this map, there's 5 gardens between my property and this application site, and there are some sites which are not well run, and this one is. It doesn't mean that, you know, that could not change in the future with a use, but I think it's very difficult to argue harm, and it is impossible to argue that it is counter to policy. And I'm very aware that one of the reasons why the supplementary planning document was drafted was because we were having all sorts of problems in appeals, and we now have a clearer planning landscape. I also take into account the issue around the parking stress survey and the fact that that does not come into play because of the timing of this application. So I think there's a bedding in issue. But I frankly, we're a committee that needs to follow policy, and there are no policies to refuse this as it currently stands. So we'll have to, as an arbiter of policy, to move that we do grant permission as per the papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. Do a seconder for that? I'll ask second from the chair. Anyone else wish to speak on the item? Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, I mean, my first speech was just to ask questions. I mean, I do want to speak against this application, and yes, I do accept that it's simply 2 more units, and I'm more than happy to accept Mr. Mehmet's comments around how well run it is. I have no idea, but I've got certainly some well run HMOs in my ward, and they can be extremely nice, and HMOs are clearly a key part of a housing strategy and provide a good function. However, I know this stretch of road like the back of my hand, and it is really, really struggling. I get the policy parts about licensed HMOs being the ones. I've been down there. There are a lot of bins, and I think, you know, we really do need to dig more deeply in terms of making sure that we've got those that data absolutely up to date, and checking out that we're not missing any opportunities to that should properties that should have been licensed, because frankly it is a long stretch of HMOs. So I'm deeply unhappy with the application, and I think it should be refused.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. If no one wishes to speak, got a proposer, got a seconder, propose as per the papers. All in favour? It's 5-4. Those against? Okay, that's spelled. So now I move. I go to the councillors. Needs to come up with some reasons for refusal.
I think the points that, if I may, Chairman, I think the points that Councillor Harper brought up were hard to not take into consideration. I've listened very carefully to what Councillor Harwood has said, but I just cannot bring myself to approve this application, as wonderful as it is. And I was impressed by the applicant. I thought he put his case very well, but I look at that map and I see so many HMOs, and I know from what Councillor Jeffrey has said about the pressure on parking.
Councillor Harper.
The pressure on parking is really, really bad. and I'm sure that we could come up with something. Can't we just give it a try? That's what I'd start with. And are we sure that they can get the waste bins from the back through to the front? That was one question perhaps I should have asked, but that's two things I'd start off with.
Okay, so Faye, just Councillor Gooch, just to go. So you want to refuse it on the fact about the bin access? Because okay, so I'm looking for the councillors who voted against the recommendation in the papers. To some reasons, the officer will help you and assist you, but he needs some guidance to actually get to that. So Councillor Jeffries.
Can I suggest a 5-minute adjournment just so because we don't actually have a motion to refuse this. We've only turned down the motion to pass it, so we don't have that motion in place. So it would be useful just to have 5 minutes of thinking time so we can come up with some reasons to propose a motion to refuse it.
No, Councillor Jeffries, that's not the way. Okay, you've got to put some reasons to them. I'll give you time to put those into planning policy, but there needs to be discussion across the board, okay, about those reasons that you want to refuse on. So could you give us some guidance, please?
Okay, in that case, I suggest we use Councillor Harper's points as the reasons for refusal.
Okay, first of all, someone needs to move this. Secondly, you can't use Councillor Harwood's reasons that he put forward for approving it. Harper. Councillor Harper isn't on this committee. No, Councillor Jeffries, it doesn't work that way, and you know that. You need to put them forward. They're your voice. If you're refusing this, you need to put them forward and tell the officer what you're refusing it on.
I suggest we refuse it on sandwiching, on concentration, and well, that's what I'm suggesting we do it on, because frankly, that's what I've heard.
Councillors and the applicant, please, you've had your 3 minutes. Okay, that's it. Sorry, Councillor Jeffries, you interrupted there. Could you please repeat that?
I propose we refuse it on the grounds of sandwiching and concentration.
Do you need any more than that?
Yeah, and also it doesn't meet the requirements of parking in the SPD. And also there was mention in the presentation, and I've got this from housing office, from one of the principal planners, houses and multiple occupancy, if they were a house before, cannot be counted as net additional dwellings. So the issue that it meets, I'll leave you to do the formal words, but it doesn't count towards, if you know what I mean, Paul. Yeah.
On the tilted balance, it doesn't count.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's one HMO regardless of how many rooms. It's not given any additional housing. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else that voted against it wants to add anything to them? So,
And if someone can translate that from the Scouts,
Is
that
there
would
enough?
be really good.
Oh, you got your mic on there.
I think because there's a calculation in the SPD for concentration, and we're saying that it meets that calculation. So I can't see how we can refuse it on the fact that it meets a recently adopted SPD. I can't. You can't square the circle. The SPD sets out what HMOs the council assesses. And yes, I've no reason to sort of dispute all the HMOs that are on this sheet, but that's not relevant because they're not considered in the adopted SPD. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're not in the council's records. Yeah.
Please talk via the mic and indicate that you wish to talk. I'm just go to the.
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, I think the report sets out the facts against the SPD, so the calculation's been done, and that shows that that is the case. So you can't argue against that as a case. And I think the same with the sandwiching point as well. That's been looked at, and based on the information, then that is also not something you can go with as a point.
just from that, just if council were minded to still go down this route, you know, because I've got the funny feeling that people aren't going to change their mind. Is there a cost warning to go with that?
Yes, there's definitely a cost warning if you go with those.
So,
Cost warning
cost
for
warning
appeal.
for appeal. So I just have to let members know. That's all that I have to do. So, okay, so we have the reasons from Councillor Jeffries. I will give the 5 minutes to actually sit down with the officer to actually get some proper wording in place so we can go over it, because otherwise we're not, I think we're going to be on a sticky wicket. So I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, councillors, I think we have some wording. Just before I restart again, I'm aware that some people are recording. If you are intending to record, can you please let yourself know? As I said, okay, thank you, gentleman at the back. Anybody else intend to record? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have some wording now. Please read out.
We have intensification of the current use and the high number of all HMOs in the local area is detrimental to the character of the local area, including additional on-street parking demand.
Okay, is that?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose on that basis of refusal.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Gooch. Okay. All in favour of refusal? Okay, those against? Okay, that's refused. Okay, moving on then. So if people that were here for that application did want to leave, I call upon Francis Ackermore to introduce the report for the Coach House, Gouldhouse Road, Staplehurst.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is a retrospective application seeking to legalize the change of use of the application building to a one-bedroom residential dwelling. This is the application site on your screen. The following slide is the application building, also showing the parking space provided for the building. The photograph on your screen relates to, it's a historic photograph of Rabbit Farmhouse, also showing the application building and other buildings within the farmhouse. This is a photo of the application building and Rabbit Farmhouse, which is a Grade 2 listed building. This is another photograph showing the relationship between the two houses. The next photograph on your screen is the proposed floor plan and elevations of the application building. It is understood that the physical works to convert the building to residential use took place in mid-1980s. Due to the length of time that has passed, the works would now be immune from enforcement action. Following the conversion works, the building was originally used as a residential annex to Rabbit Farmhouse. The building was also occasionally rented for holiday use during the summer months and was registered as business premises from 2012 to 2020. The building has been occupied as a separate residential dwelling since June 2004. The proposal was assessed against policy QD5 and was found to be acceptable in all areas. The officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We should have Mr. Hammond as an objector.
Good evening, Chair and councillors, and I'm sorry that this matter, given the weight of other things that you are contending with, has been brought to you. Nevertheless, here we are. I'm disappointed that the document recommending permission for this application does not address the specific details we listed in our objection. Consequently, I do not feel that it provides a balanced assessment of the detrimental impact it has on Rabbit Farmhouse. Given that there are only 3 minutes for me to speak, it's not possible for me to cover all of the details which have been omitted, especially considering things like its listed status and the fact that there are, in fact, bats located within 10 meters of the building. So I will focus on 2 critical areas of concern. The first is that the application documents are replete with factual errors and misleading statements, particularly relating to the privacy and overlooking. These issues are thoroughly highlighted in our objection. Any recommendation or decision based solely on these documents would be unsafe. Specifically, the property has not, as implied in the application, been in constant residential use. It was only rented out by the applicant in the summer of 2024, following substantial refurbishment. Furthermore, the orientation of the buildings is incorrectly described in the application. In reality, there is substantial mutual overlooking, with occupants of both properties able to look directly into each other's buildings. The photographs taken from within Rabbit Farmhouse, which clearly illustrate this issue, have not been included in the planning recommendation. The second main area of concern is that there is inadequate separation between the properties. Most councils throughout the UK adopt the government's guidelines that properties with habitable rooms facing each other should be separated by a distance greater than 21 metres to avoid overlooking. We have collated a list of over 21 councils following this guideline. In this case, the properties are less than 7 metres apart. As a result, there is substantial loss of amenity, loss of privacy, increased overlooking and heightened noise, all to the detriment of residents of Rabbit Farmhouse, as well as any occupant of the proposed coach house. This situation is inconsistent not only with the 21 metre rule, but also with the council's own policies DM1, DM9 and DM30. Additionally, the proposed erection of a 1.8 metre high fence would further contradict policy DM30, which relates to openness of the countryside and outlook. Previous planning permission granted to the applicant for a new build, reference number 20/505838/full, explicitly restricted that development from having any windows overlooking Rabbit Farmhouse in order to protect the privacy of its occupants. We contend that the same principle should be applied to this application. In conclusion, whilst we accept that the building should be used for some purpose, we object to it being granted full residential status for full-time occupation, whether as a rental or otherwise, on the grounds outlined above and in detail in our objection. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ash, I don't know if he's joining us virtually or whether he's actually in the ground desk. We have no one virtually, so we do have a very short statement. Yes, you're next. Oh, sorry. That's okay. No worries. So we don't have Councillor Ash here or joining us virtually, so Debbie will read out a statement for us.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a statement, a very short statement from Staplehurst Parish Council. We have previously queried the garden space on the basis of the red boundary lines on the plans. However, subsequent to that, the applicant has stated that they are not altering the garden size. Both parties have added comments regarding the curtilage of the coach house and its relevance to the application. We do not have the expertise to comment on this. With regard to the privacy issue, we understand there is a 20-metre distance between first floors of buildings, but would need clarification as to whether the 6-metre distance in this case would fall under this, as there is no new build taking place, ? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then stuff. That's okay.
Yeah. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Alex Clough and here to speak in support of the coach house as the architect who worked on the main build of the applicant's home adjacent to it. You can just see it off the plan on screen now. Following the recommendation by Francis from an objective planning perspective, I want to focus on the intentions, the care and the commitment of the applicants and the positive steps they've taken with respect to their neighbours and the local environment. The coach house itself has long been converted from its historical layout and was in residential use when both the applicants and the neighbours, who were the objectors, purchased their respective properties. So both parties knew of the current situation when they moved to the area. The applicants moved into the coach house while they built their new property. They haven't altered the external or historic character of the coach house, nor have they changed its use. The access to and use of the coach house has remained the same for decades. They've made no change to the use, which was never historically an issue to any of the local neighbours or authorities. Their intention is to maintain the residential use of the coach house, as has been the case for a long period of time, which allows for the possibility of providing accommodation for carers in later life. Since purchasing property, the applicants have acted responsibly and thoughtfully. When designing their new home on the plot, they intentionally reduced the scale and adjusted its orientation from the previously consented two-storey layout to protect neighbourly privacy. The main house, they went through quite a lot of work to make sure they weren't impacting Rabbit Farmhouse, going to the extent of moving the building northwards as a separate application at their own cost to minimise any disruption at all. Trying to build a picture that my client and the applicant is not trying to overlook or impinge on the neighbours in any way, shape or form. That was agreed by the statutory consultees, including the Conservation Officer, the Environmental Protection Team and the Internal Drainage Board, who have reviewed the proposals to regulise the use and confirm that this application poses no harm to heritage, amenity or the environment. It's also worth noting that none of these statutory consultees recommended conditions to be placed on the application if granted permission. Beyond their respect for the neighbours, the applicants have demonstrated a long-term commitment to sustainability in the natural environment, implementing sustainable energy measures and enhanced planting across the site, including participation in council-backed tree planting initiatives. The conservation did suggest landscaping to reduce visibility between the two buildings, and in line with that, the applicants have planted 33 single-stem silver birch trees along the shared boundary between the two properties to soften the borders and give mutual privacy without darkening or impinging on the neighbours' amenity. They're also planning on planting several small shrubs and plan to grow scented jasmine along the boundary to soften the border further. This application note proposes no construction, simply to regularise works undertaken many decades ago. No changes to the drainage or lighting. Bin and bike stores and the renewable energy provision to support the coach house were unanimously approved as part of the applicant's work on the main house. I respectfully ask the committee to recognise these intentions and grant planning permission, allowing the coach house to continue in its current use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move to the board councillors first. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. When I read this, I mean, this is a property I know very well, actually. I've, dare I say it, I've campaigned up and down the Goudhurst Road, and this is a property, as I said, I've spoken to residents there as well. So from that point of view, I can judge it from as something, an area I do personally know very well. I looked at we have to judge this on planning, obviously on planning policy. And to be honest, I couldn't really find anything in our current planning policy that would say I should object to this, because it seemed perfectly reasonable. And I certainly don't think it contradicts LPR 9, which is the one of the development in the countryside. In fact, what I would say is that this whole development, if you take the Rabbit Farmhouse, you take the coach house, you take the barn, this is very typical of a Wealden development in the countryside. If you do have the opportunity to fly over the Weald, you'll see lots of developments very similar to this. And in fact, I personally lived in a not so dissimilar development like this, which had an oast house, a farmhouse and a barn, and my barn, which I lived in, was very, very close to the oast house, because that's the way they were developed. So whilst I understand the privacy issue, I actually, in this case, I think because of the way that it's been developed, it's a typical Wealden development, in my view, then I can't really see any reason to object to it. And certainly, from my experience, it doesn't provide any particular issues. So on that basis, and I don't really have much more to say because I think this is on balance a reasonable development, and I would certainly move to approve it. But I would listen to what obviously colleagues say. But I would be happy to approve it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ridden.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to support what Councillor Perry has said. I can't see any real planning reasons to vote against this matter, so I'm happy to second Councillor Perry's proposal.
I just need to confirm that Councillor Perry did propose as per the papers.
Yes, I would propose as per the papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just got one little question. The window we're talking about, the large window, is that a frosted window or a?
Yeah, so you're referring to the window on the front elevation of the building. So that's a window showing on just adjacent to the front door. We could condition it to be obscure glazed to a section 1.7 meters above the inside floor level.
So yeah, that's, if you're happy to take that amendment. Okay. I think that covers the privacy issue of people looking in and such. So, Councillor Cleater.
Sorry, just a question and clarification for me, please. Page 120, 2.04. It says the proposal includes a 1.8 metre high fence between the application building and the Rabbit Farmhouse. Where's that proposing to go? Along that little lane?
Yes, so this is the block plan currently on the screen. The proposed 1.8 meter fence is going to go along the red line boundary, the bottom red line boundary, all the way up to the existing hedging to the side of the Rabbit Farmhouse. Yes.
Yes, Cleater, you might press it on, but are you happy with that?
Yeah, it just, I mean, I'm 1.65 meters. Yes, I did go metric at one point when I was doing my height for my passport. That seems quite a high fence to stick between the two. But if we're talking about privacy, but also blocking light, that's quite a high fence. Because it's like, I can see the little one there if I'm looking in the right place on the pictures I'm looking at. But anyway, that's my only comment.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to move as per the proposal with that amendment to the obscure glass. Okay, all in favour? The computer, unanimous, as approved as per the papers. Okay, I get the funny feeling this one will not be as easy. I move on to item 19. Call upon Francis Amaker to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This application was reported to the December 2024 Planning Committee meeting with a recommendation for approval. The committee resolved to defer the decision on the application to enable the committee consider the formal consultation response from the Environment Agency. and also to seek accurate plans of the existing and proposed first and second floor plans, taking into account members' concerns regarding fire safety. The applicant has submitted a fresh flood risk assessment, which confirmed the residential floor levels are set above the estimated flood level. The applicant has also confirmed residential heat and power equipment, including the boiler, are all located on the upper floor. The flood warning and evacuation plan submitted as part of the application includes a safe access and escape route. The retained external staircase provides a more efficient route to evacuate the building when compared with the internal staircase. The Environment Agency confirmed the details are acceptable and removed their objection to the proposal. Regarding the second reason for deferral, the applicant has submitted a revised plan for the first and second floors. The MBC Housing Standard team have considered the layout of the HMO and have not raised any safety concerns. The proposals are considered to comply with all relevant development plan policies. To briefly go through the plans. So this is the site plan for the application. The next photographed on your screen is the application building itself. So the applicant has submitted this external areas plans for the application site. This shows residential amenity for occupiers of the proposed HMO. It also indicates the parking provision for occupiers and then the parking for the shop at the ground floor. The plan in front of you now is the ground floor layout and first floor layout. As you can see from the plan, the areas shaded yellow is the external staircase, which is to be retained. The blue areas is the internal staircase from first to second floors, which is also would be retained. The orange area is the internal staircase from first to second floors, which would also be retained. The green internal staircase
Propose as per the papers from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. So on that motion, I will move to a vote. All in favour? Seven, 4. Those against? Okay. That's 3 against and abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, so that is approved as per the papers. Thank you, councillors. So we now move on to the other George, the other application on this site. I move for the officer to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the same site. It relates to the ground floor of the George. So the current application is a section 73 application, which was previously determined by this committee in December 2024. The committee determined that in the absence of an appeal against non-determination, the council would have granted planning permission. In considering that appeal, the appeal inspector agreed with the committee's decision, but dismissed the appeal on the lack of a flood risk assessment. The current application has been submitted to deal with the council granted planning permission. In considering
Sorry, can you please not interrupt, please? Can you put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Yeah, so the current application is submitted to deal with the reason for refusal, which was only on flood risk grounds. We consulted the Environment Agency as indicated in the previous scheme for the site, and they have no objection to this element of the scheme. So the officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell, once again.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. So this is downstairs. This was the farm shop that in its original iteration was actually positively supported because we thought it was going to be farm shop, local produce and a cafe. What we got, and I'm sure you can see the photos in here, something quite different. Now, I know that's not planning, so I won't dwell on that particularly. Pleased to see that the applicant has decided to have the decorative design on the windows. That's good. My worry with this, though, is how can we be sure that he's going to keep to anything that we say and hear, because it's just changed so much. So, and it's very important, we need clarity with this. because the approved drawings, the proposed drawings with this, he's actually started building it and it's not as these proposed drawings. So you go in the door at the front, the wall's supposed to be to the right-hand side on the separation of the two elements. He's built it on the left-hand side, making the left-hand side even smaller. So these drawings are not as per what's being built right now, today. And I'm actually confused by the conditions within this, because when I'm looking at the draft conditions, condition 3 says the area of floor space shall be used as set out on approved drawing 205D. That really needs buttoning down. And then on condition 5, it says the approved changes to the ground floor shall be reversed to the layout approved under 23502781 full. And I actually think that that was the first one that everyone liked. So I'd be really happy if we are doing condition 5, but I'm fairly sure that we're not. So I think we do need absolute 100% clarity on this before you go down the route of, oh, it hasn't changed much. Oh, it's just all internals. Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell, for pointing out those points. Councillor Brown. No. Oh, sorry. Oh, Steve, sorry.
Good evening, Chairman, members. Yalding residents feel completely let down with this application, causing mistrust and scepticism in planning. We hope you will correct that by refusing the application. The George was a much loved, busy and viable pub. Residents would have fought to keep it a pub had the applicant not come forward with the second best option. The original heritage impact, design and access statement said the proposal is to transform the facility into a restaurant which will specialise in promoting local produce with a facility to sell local produce, and the project does not involve any alterations to the building structure. It will only have an interior refurbishment. This heritage statement has since been incorrectly loaded on the planning portal and drawings mislabelled, leading to misinterpretation. From the get-go, the applicant has had complete disregard for his submitted documents, drawing and planning conditions. If these documents are to be disregarded and conditions ignored, then what is the point of the planning process? It is reported that condition 6 restricts the area of floor space with exact dimensions. This is simply untrue. There were no dimensions originally. They were added later. Condition 6 actually restricts the layout to allow the original agreed intent. This is important for 4 reasons. 1, the new figure gives a false baseline and an incorrect perception of a small change in overall area. The misleading tactic of colour-coded and annotated plans seems to have been accepted by all except locals who know well the original layout. 2, the change in layout completely changes the whole concept of the development. The original layout matched the original intention, allowing an enjoyable, separate dining and drinking space. The location of the new eating area will not give a facility for residents to interact and socialise, which the planning inspector placed great importance on. 3, the new layout does not make more efficient use of space. Therefore, the harm the inspector identified by the removal of heritage features is indeed not justified. 4, without condition 6, some changes would not require planning permission, and this is exactly why condition 6 was negotiated. Of my concern, building work has already started. A wall has been built on the wrong side of the door as shown on these application plans, making the dining space even smaller. How can it be right to approve an application that will immediately require enforcement action? The application states there are no